They called me the Great Compromiser, but I never sought compromise for its own sake. I sought unity, a fragile, flickering idea that could hold together a nation perpetually at war with itself. My name is Henry Clay. I served in Congress for more than 4 decades, spoke in more chambers than most men walk through in a lifetime, and tried, again and again, to keep the Republic from tearing itself apart. I was born on April 12, 1777, in a modest home in Hanover County, Virginia. My father was a Baptist preacher and planter, a man who died when I was just 4 years old, leaving my mother to raise me and my 8 siblings. She remarried and we moved to Richmond. I did not grow up wealthy, nor particularly privileged, though in those years simply being white and male was a kind of privilege already. What I had was something harder to define: hunger, a need to rise. I became a clerk in the Virginia Court of Chancery, where I caught the attention of George Wythe, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence and a legal giant in Virginia. He mentored me. He opened his books and his mind to a hungry young man who absorbed law like others absorbed scripture. I studied, debated, and spoke with every breath I had. By the age of 20, I had moved to Kentucky, the frontier of the young nation, and was admitted to the bar. Lexington became my home. Its people, fiercely independent, often violent, always proud, became my people. I married Lucretia Hart, the daughter of a wealthy businessman. She was steady where I was fire, calm where I stormed. We raised 11 children, though heartbreak would take more than half of them before I reached old age. Politics came quickly. I served briefly in the Kentucky legislature, then, by some twist of fate and timing, was appointed to the U.S. Senate at just 29, even though I did not meet the constitutional age requirement of 30. No one seemed to mind. I had already become known as a gifted orator, a man who could move a room with words the way generals move armies. But it was in the House of Representatives where I made my stand. I was elected in 1813 and chosen almost immediately as Speaker of the House, an unheard of rise. I used the position not as a referee but as a general. I directed debates, drove legislation, and took stances that most speakers would shy from. In those early years, I was a war hawk. I pushed for conflict with Britain, believing that the War of 1812 was necessary to defend American honor. I believed in American expansion, in manifest destiny before it had a name. And when war came, I did not shrink from it. But I also learned its price. The war drained our economy, strained our alliances, and nearly broke the fragile threads holding our young union together. When the war ended, I became one of the negotiators of the Treaty of Ghent. In Belgium, I met face-to-face with British diplomats, and we forged a peace that stopped the bloodshed without ceding an inch of American territory. It was there I realized the power of negotiation, the nobility of hard-earned agreement over easy violence. Returning home, I committed myself to what I would call the American system, a blend of protective tariffs, a strong national bank, and federal investment in infrastructure. Roads, canals, bridges, these were not mere conveniences. They were veins through which the lifeblood of a nation could flow. A country divided by distance could be united by roads. Not everyone agreed. Andrew Jackson and I clashed like thunderclouds. He was all fire and fury, a soldier who believed in popular will above all. I believed in balance, in institutions that could temper passion with reason. In 1824, we both ran for president, and no candidate secured a majority in the Electoral College. The decision fell to the House, and I threw my support behind John Quincy Adams. When Adams made me Secretary of State, the Jacksonians screamed, "Corrupt bargain." It haunted me. They painted me as a schemer, a backroom dealer, a man who traded power for position. I denied it. I swore that I had acted for the good of the country, that Adams was more fit to govern. But mud sticks. Jackson's supporters never forgot, and when he won the presidency in 1828, he made sure that neither I nor my vision would advance easily. But I did not retreat. I returned to the Senate and fought him every step of the way. I opposed his destruction of the National Bank. I challenged his overreach during the nullification crisis. When South Carolina threatened secession over tariffs, I authored a compromise that diffused the tension, a blend of pride and pragmatism. It would not be the last time I stood between the Union and the abyss. Through all this, I lost more than I gained. I ran for president 3 times, in 1824, 1832, and 1844. Each time I failed. Each time I gave everything, and each time the country chose another path. But I remained. I endured, because the fight was never for the title. It was for the future. Let that be enough for now. The story does not end here. The flames of conflict would rise again, and I would step once more into the fire. But that will come, in time. History rarely remembers the quiet fights, the long nights in committee, the endless drafts of bills, the whispered bargains struck in candlelit halls. But that was where I fought my hardest battles. I knew that cannon fire made headlines, but it was compromise that built nations, and compromise was my weapon. After my defeats in the presidential races, many expected me to fade, but I was not built for retreat. I returned to the Senate, older perhaps, but not diminished. I watched as the Union strained beneath its own contradictions, a free republic that permitted bondage, a growing economy chained to outdated systems, a dream constantly undone by its own realities. I could not undo slavery, though God knows I tried in my way. I spoke against its spread, though I owned slaves myself, a sin I will carry beyond the grave. I sought gradual solutions, colonization, compensation, anything short of war. But I was never radical. I was never righteous enough for the abolitionists, nor committed enough for the slaveholders. I walked the middle, believing still in reason. Some called it cowardice. I called it hope. In 1850, the storm finally came. California sought to enter the Union as a free state. The South threatened secession. The air in Washington turned thick with dread. I had one last fight left in me. I rose from my seat, frail now, my voice less thunder and more wind, and introduced what would become the Compromise of 1850. It was a bundle of contradictions, admitting California as a free state, establishing territories with undefined slavery status, banning the slave trade in D.C., and strengthening the fugitive slave law. I knew it would satisfy no one completely, but that was the point. A true compromise leaves everyone uneasy. I spent weeks arguing, pleading, crafting words like bandages. I called on North and South alike to see beyond the present, to glimpse the ruin that would come if we fractured. I spoke not as a politician, but as a father of a house on fire. Let it not burn, I begged. Let it not burn. And for a time, we held. The compromise passed. The Union breathed. But it was a brittle breath. I knew it. The cracks had been papered over, not sealed. The questions had been delayed, not answered. Yet I believed delay could be salvation. Perhaps time would cool the rage, soften the edges, offer solutions that fury could not. I did not live to see what came next. I died in June of 1852 in Washington, far from Lexington. They buried me beneath a monument I did not ask for. I never cared for stone. I cared for soil. I cared for the trembling thing we called Union, and the dream of keeping it stitched together with something stronger than force. I was not beloved in my lifetime. I was mocked, challenged, dismissed. But even my enemies knew that when I stood to speak, the chamber listened. I left behind no great victories, no sweeping amendments, no land conquered or treasure claimed. I left behind attempts, bridges half built, fires half extinguished. Some say I failed. I did not deliver freedom. I did not become president. I did not end the strife. But if failure means standing between war and peace and buying the nation 1 more year, 10 more years, then let me fail 1,000 times more. I watched men die in the name of pride. I watched others kill in the name of God. And through it all, I clung to this belief that words still matter, that the pen still holds power, that reason, even when weary, must not be abandoned. My children died, one by one, some in war, some in sickness. I buried 6 of them. The grief never left. I carried it into every vote, every speech. I spoke for the mothers who could not, for the fathers too broken to raise their voice. I spoke not just as a senator, but as a survivor. And if my name fades from textbooks, so be it. I did not speak for memory. I spoke for moments. Moments when a nation could have shattered but didn't. Moments when anger paused just long enough to let logic speak. Let that be my legacy. Not glory, but restraint. Not triumph, but time. Not the man who lit the flame, but the one who shielded it from the wind. If you hear my voice now, echoing through these old halls, know that I did not expect you to agree with me, only to listen, and maybe, just maybe, to hold together just a little longer.